Okay, so class today is going to be a little different. We're going to do a little, I'm going to talk a bunch in the beginning, surprise, surprise, right? But mostly I want to just make sure everybody knows as much as you can right now about the diaphragm. One of the things, I took a class just last night in pranayama, and one of the things that I was reminded of in the class is the word prana. So prana is our life force energy. And of course, we receive prana through the air we breathe, the water we drink, the sunlight, the food we eat, the love we share. There's lots of ways to receive prana and gain our bioenergy and life source energy. But our breath is the primary one in which we receive prana. And the word prana, pra, means constant, and na means movement. So prana is the constant movement. So I love that definition because instead of thinking of prana as something that we hoard and gather and hold and have, if we think about it really allowing us to be in the flow of life, that when we connect with the flow of life, this is when we feel most energized, and we can have so much goodness that happens. So with our diaphragm being the primary breathing muscle, if we have trouble with our diaphragm, we are going to have trouble breathing. Simple as that. And there's so many things that can challenge our diaphragm, whether it be abdominal surgeries that can create scar tissue in our abdominal region, a history of trauma, a history of sitting, we all have this, right? So putting ourselves in front of computer screens, we tend to have our head jut forward and our shoulders slump, and this constricts our diaphragm. And much of how we move in our lives creates the movement of our diaphragm. It's something that we do very unconsciously. So remember that the breath has both volition and autonomy. So, we can make the breath happen and we can control it, but it also happens without our control. It's so important. So the more we can facilitate good breathing practices, the better off we will be, both with our prana, but also just it affects every single system in your body. So the diaphragm, being the primary breathing muscle, can impact our posture, it can impact our circulation, it can impact our lymphatic movement of our lymph system. It has an impact on our digestion, it has an impact on our fascial health. Really, there's our nervous system. There's not a system in the body that isn't impacted by our diaphragm. And it's kind of interesting that it's at the hub of our body. It's in the center of our body. So, it makes sense that it would be the center of what we need to focus on for good health in lots of ways. The word diaphragm comes from a Greek word, and the Greek word, I can't remember how it's pronounced, but it just means to partition. So the diaphragm also partitions the lung and chest cavity from the abdominal cavity. It's the boundary between the two. And because of that, it can affect both. The movement of the diaphragm affects everything below, and it also affects everything above. So I'm going to get out my trusty little anatomy app. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Hold on. Oh no. Tell me if I lose you, okay? Somebody be aware, because I'm not always the most tech savvy. Can you see my screen? Can you see the anatomy app? Okay. Yes. All right, good. All right, so here is your chest, right? So everybody, know where you are. This is your sternum. These are your collarbones or your clavicles. This here's your shoulder blade. I removed the arms, and just so we could have a little bit easier view of what's happening. So these muscles are not the diaphragm. So this underneath, this is the diaphragm, this big dome shaped muscle. Let me remove, hold on. Give me a little bit of patience for the way I navigate this app sometimes. So I'm going to just remove the thoracic muscle so we can have a better view of what's happening, okay, in our diaphragm. Okay, so I'm just removing some muscles. Thank God we don't really remove those muscles. They're very much part of what we're experiencing, but I want to isolate the diaphragm. So this is the right side of the body over here, and this is the left side. Notice how the right hemisphere, there's two hemispheres of the diaphragm. The right hemisphere sits a little higher, and that's to accommodate for the very big liver that sits right below it. And the left hemisphere is over here. So even our diaphragm is not symmetrical. So when we think, you know, about our right and left lungs being asymmetrical, so is our diaphragm. So it's obvious, this is the diaphragm in its relaxed state when it domes up toward the heart. And when we breathe in, the diaphragm contracts and comes down and flattens. So this is the relaxed state of the diaphragm. I tried on this app to look for a video of the movement of the diaphragm, but they didn't have one because that would be really cool. So I wish they had that. But anyway, so you can see the dome of the diaphragm. The white stuff is its tendon at the top that attaches to the pericardial sac. So if we look at it from above here, the heart sits right on top of that. And you might notice this hole right here, right? And you might notice some other holes down here. And this is where the vessels of the body transect the diaphragm to get from the upper part of the body to the lower part. So I'll show you that. Here is our aorta and our heart. And here is the vena cava. This is the main vein that goes back. So you can see it goes right up in that hole. And the artery, the aorta sits right along your spine and goes down through this hole to feed the lower half of the body. Now I can't put the digestive system in here. I tried earlier and it just, everything happens all at once. So the intestines are all there, so we lose sight. But this hole right here is where the esophagus comes down into. And then the other things that we have moving in there are nerves. So if you think about all the way the nerves have to go through too, including the vagus nerve, which is a big one. So, you know, they go through those holes as well. And then the last thing that we have that sits through there is, besides the digestive system, hold on, I gotta find it, is our lymph. So, whoa, it starts to get very busy in there, doesn't it? We're all jam-packed full, but you can see that the lymph travels up through these holes as well. So let me get our little guy out, back in, move him over. Sorry, I don't drive very well, so don't mind me. Okay, so now I'm gonna take off some of the other layers just so we can focus back on the diaphragm. And this app is very cool. It's called 3D for Medical. I know Maggie geeks out on it too. So, but if you ever want to know more about anatomy, this is a great one. Okay, back to the diaphragm. So I want you to see where it attaches. So underneath and behind, it attaches to the backside of the xiphoid process. That's that bottom tip of your sternum right here. It attaches onto the lower 6 ribs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has attachments on all of those ribs. And it also has what I think is very cool, these crura, which are, I already spoke about the ligament at the, or the tendon at the top, but this tendon right here, there's 2 of them. You have the left and the right. These are the crura. And I've described this to you before as thinking of the diaphragm as an umbrella. And these are the handles of the umbrella. Oops, I don't want to highlight the vertebrae right now. So they attach right onto the lumbar spine. So of course, you can think about how much things are attached. The diaphragm attaches to a lot of structure. So it's postural, and it also affects everything when we move the diaphragm well. And then the last thing, you know, the connective tissue isn't in here, but everything is connected. The heart sits right here, and this tendon wraps around the pericardial sac. So the pericardial sac wraps around the heart. So the diaphragm and the heart are intimately connected. And then look down here and see how connected. Look how close. This is your psoas minor. This is your psoas major. Look how close the attachments of the diaphragm are to the attachments of your psoas. So these 2 muscles really speak to each other. So when one tenses, the other tenses. That's the minor. This is psoas major. Not everybody has a psoas minor. And then this muscle, which is also fascially connected to the diaphragm, is your quadratus lumborum, your deep low back muscle, that one right back there. Okay, so a lot of important deep structural muscles in your body attached to your diaphragm, or fascially attached to your diaphragm. So, one begets the other. So when we are moving today, let's try to remember all of these beautiful connections. Okay, before I drop out of this app, does anybody have a question? Go ahead, Maggie.
My one quick question is, I notice with the lower ribs that because you don't have that other material, I can't remember what it's called, it looks like the ribs sort of stop midway, but there's something.
Here is the cartilage that connects the ribs to the sternum. So your ribs don't connect to your sternum. You have cartilage all the way up that connects to your sternum. Your ribs connect to your vertebrae in the back directly, but in the front, your ribs are connected to cartilage that attaches to your sternum. And this is a wise design because our ribs have to move, right? We have this expansion and contraction and expand like a few inches of expansion and contraction. So if this was solid bone to bone, we would be rigid and stuck and we would not have this play in our rib cage. So we have to have this cartilaginous ring. Now, what I took away before was muscles. So let me actually say that little bit before this is funny. These are the elbows. They're floating out by themselves right now. But so the other thing to remember is we have zones of breathing, zones of respiration. So when our diaphragm moves, our belly moves, right? So when it domes down, all the organs are going to get pushed out of place and our belly expands. And that's called abdominal breathing. Some people call it diaphragmatic breathing, but think of it as your belly is moving. That's abdominal breathing. And that's really important because that should be our baseline breathing. That should be our at-rest breathing. The parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated when we abdominally breathe. It's a very good, efficient use of our diaphragm where we fill the lungs well. And then the second zone of respiration is thoracic breathing, which is when we breathe into the rib cage. Okay. And these muscles, the intercostal muscles are what contract and inflate the ribs. And these are the muscles that recruit with the diaphragm to help us move our rib cage as we breathe, which of course will happen in belly breathing, but specifically very much those muscles are in charge of our thoracic breathing when we're using the rib cage to breathe. And this is a sympathetic response. So when we are giddy up, like I have to run now, active, needing to be in the sympathetic drive, we work a lot in our thoracic breathing rhythm. And the other time when thoracic breathing rhythm takes over is when we have to contract the belly. So think plank pose. When you're stabilizing your core, so your belly can't expand very much, then your breath will move more into a thoracic place. But notice, you're never very relaxed when your belly is engaged, right? When you're bracing your core, that's not a relaxed state. So it's a sympathetic state, which is not a bad thing. A lot of times we need sympathetic drive. So that's zone 2 of respiration. And zone 3 of respiration is clavicular. So all up in here. Yeah, and unfortunately, many of us, all of us probably do a little too much of this. These muscles should be reserved for extreme states, when you're running from the tiger fast. These are the muscles of emergency breathing when all else fails. When people have asthma attacks, there's a lot going on up here. And so if we tend to breathe up in this chamber, the muscles in our neck, that I don't have them showing here, but let's see if I can add a couple. I don't know when they'll decide to come on. Your scalene muscles, there we go. These muscles are very, they lift, you can see that they're connected, it's hard to see, but they are connected to the rib, there we go. They're connected to the rib cage. So when you breathe in your clavicular region, these are the muscles that you're engaging, your traps and your scalenes, to lift those ribs up to get a little bit of extra pocket of air in those upper lung fields. So when we are stressed out, we breathe up here. And unfortunately, a lot of our breath habits have landed in this place. So if you're an up breather, and on your inhale, you go up and get taller, and on your exhale, you go down and get smaller. That is a sign that you are clavicularly breathing. And we want to step away from that and learn how to move our diaphragm well. Okay, last thing I'm going to say, I could go on and on and on and on, but let me move this. This is your transverse abdominis. Okay, so this is that, sorry, I don't drive this guy very well, but it wraps all the way from the fascia in the back. There's a big sheath of fascia that's not here. And it connects to that, your thoracolumbar fascia. And then it comes, let me move him. And then the transverse abdominis wraps around to the front. And what you're not seeing here is there's a big fascial band that connects here. This is your linea alba, this ligament that runs down the very center from your sternum to your pubic bone, but you have a fascial sheath here that the transverse abdominis attaches to. And these muscles also, look how close that you can't, that you can barely separate them from the diaphragm. So even though that's a separate muscle, they work very much in conjunction. Your TA and your diaphragm work very much in conjunction together. So I hope, even if this is a little overwhelming looking at anatomy, what you're getting out of it is how intimately connected everything is, and how breathing impacts everything we do. So, okay, any last question before I pull out of here? Okay, if you ever want to know about the app, just let me know. 3D4 Medical. Okay, now can you see me? Okay, all right, great. Okay, so I think, let me just make sure I kind of talked a little bit about, one last thing I wanted to say. The diaphragm doesn't have a lot of nerve sensation. So it's hard to feel, right? It's not only like very deep in there, but it's not something that we have a lot of tactile, nervy kind of feeling around. So the times when you might really feel your diaphragm is when you hiccup. That's the diaphragm doing a spasm, as well as if you've ever had the wind knocked out of you, that usually impacts your phrenic nerve, is the nerve that innervates the diaphragm. And when you get the wind knocked out of you, it shocks the phrenic nerve for a moment, which is why suddenly you can't breathe, because your body literally cannot contract and release the diaphragm for a moment until that phrenic nerve gets back on its feet. Okay, so I think I said everything I wanted to say. Let me just, one last little quick thing. Kids, they naturally belly breathe. How many times have you seen like a little toddler and they got this big Buddha belly, and it's awesome, right? They just have this natural tendency to relax their bellies. And studies have shown that when kids reach about 5.5, which is right when they start sitting at a desk and dealing with school, right, is when they suddenly start turning into thoracic breathers like most adults do, instead of, they lose that belly breathing. We all kind of lose it because of the lifestyles that we create. So let's try to imagine, when we're moving today, this feeling of what a relaxed toddler belly is like. Like, think of any 2, 3, 4-year-old that you know, and they just have this like relaxed belly that sticks out. We want to kind of embrace our inner child. And then the very last thing I'll say, I told you I was going to talk, so I gave you the caveat ahead of time, right? But the last thing on my notes, how do we breathe better? So we've talked about these things so much. We're going to do a few exercises today that help us. But first, breathe through your nose. As much and as often as you can, try to make your breath come and go through your nose instead of mouth breathing. We're going to do some diaphragm exercises, which will help. We're going to mobilize some tissues with the ball, which will help. Getting your exhales. We're a culture of inhalations, so keeping track of your exhales, focusing on your exhales can help you breathe better. Doing some strengthening exercises, which we're going to do. And then change up your routines. So if you're always sitting in the same way at your desk, or if you're always doing the exact same exercise, or if you're always, standing in certain postures, change things up as much as you can so that you give diversity to your posture and your movements to help your diaphragm. Okay, thank you for listening. I hope that you're interested in the diaphragm, since I just spent, 20 minutes talking about it. So Okay, so, oh, there's a question in the chat box. Let me just answer Ruth's question. So the diaphragm is kind of hugging the liver from the top. Yes. Think of your diaphragm as like a hoodie, like a sweatshirt hoodie over your internal organs. And then it's also a chair, a couch, a comfort seat for your lungs and your heart. So it can be the couch for your lung and your heart, and it can be the blanket over your organs. Okay, so find a comfortable seat and sit up straight and tall and take a moment to drop your attention into your body. So notice your breath. It's very hard to get a natural glimpse or a glimpse of your natural breath because the minute we turn our attention toward it, we typically change our breathing. So do your best to just observe what naturally happens for you. Are you an up here clavicular breather? Are you a chest puffer outer breather? Thoracic breather? Are you a belly breather? One is, all of these have uses. All three of these zones of respiration have uses. But here we are relaxed, hopefully, sitting, not having to recruit a lot of extra oxygen. So let's feel into the belly breath as much as we can. Imagine that your diaphragm is dropping. Right? Can you feel that dome sink down like an elevator that's dropping? Not only does the diaphragm drop and flatten, but it widens. So can you get that feeling that the diaphragm is moving in this way? The toddler belly body. The exhale, that dome of contraction. So the diaphragm contracts on our inhale down, and it domes and back into a relaxed state on our exhale. So can you feel that the flattening of the diaphragm is a contraction of the diaphragm? Can you feel as though the doming back up is a relaxation? This sometimes is difficult to feel because the muscles may be what you're feeling. And when we belly breathe and inhale, our belly muscles relax. So you might feel a state of relaxation as your diaphragm contracts, because it's easier to feel muscles than the diaphragm. And you might feel that as you exhale, you feel your abdominal muscles, your intercostals contract, but actually your diaphragm is relaxing in this state. So see if you can go past the contraction and relaxation of the muscles to sense the diaphragm itself. Remember prana, constant movement. Add another layer onto the breath. So feeling that belly breath as we inhale and exhale. And then we're going to add the thoracic breathing to it. So first, as you inhale, start with the belly. Add on your thoracic breath, opening the rib cage, and then relax. What is your tendency when you relax on the exhale? Do you tend to relax your rib cage first and then your belly, or your belly first and then your rib cage, or does it happen simultaneously? Just noticing your patterns. When you inhale, belly comes first, then thoracic spine, or not spine, but thoracic cavity. I don't think we need a lot of training in opening up our clavicular area for breath, the zone 3. So we're just going to keep that quiet for now. Just know that whenever you need extra breath, you can belly, chest, and then collarbone breathe, where you can fill the bottom to the middle to the top, and then release. There's a lot of pranayamic techniques that kind of have holds where you fill one zone and hold and fill another zone and hold and fill another zone and hold. And you can do that on the exhale as well. But today we're not going to mess with the breath. We just want to uncover the breath. There's 4 parts to the breath. We have the inhale, a pause, the exhale, and a pause. So now that you've got some movement going in your belly and ribs and your diaphragms, hopefully moving, let's add those 4 sections of the breath. So try to have an evenness to your inhale and exhale for this. We're going to move into box breathing in a moment, but first let's just feel those pauses. So inhaling, a slight pause, exhaling, pause, inhaling. And just find that at your own pace for a moment. Notice the pauses between the inhale and exhale, kind of accentuate them a little bit. Now we're just going to do just a few rounds of box breathing and then we'll start moving. I know you've been sitting a while. So box breathing is, think of a box, right? So the 4 parts of our breath are all going to be equal. Okay, our inhale, our pause, our exhale, our pause. This is called box breath. So I'm going to just do it on a count of 4 because most people are able to hold that long. But for you, if you feel like you want to go longer than that, you can do whatever pace. You don't have to listen to me. You can do what your pace works well. So relax, find a posture that's comfortable. Breathe out all the way. And we'll start with the inhale. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Turn to your normal breath, belly, then chest. If you struggle with erratic breathing, this is a really good breath pattern to develop so that you can get constancy into your breath. All right, enough of this sitting, let's move now. So place the hands together at the heart. Feel your beautiful breath with your hands there. Does it automatically want to make you breathe up? So see if you can still belly, chest, breathe. Offer an intention. All right. Relax onto our back. Okay. So think about, all those vessels that go in those little holes. So every time you're breathing and moving the diaphragm, you're massaging your main blood vessels, you're massaging your heart, you're moving lymph, you're innervating, well, not innervating, but you're stimulating nerves. So this is a really beautiful thing that we have all this working in harmony together. So let's stretch our arms overhead and feel into that big, beautiful reach of the body. Reach the right side, reach the left side. Find your breath here. Open up the ribs, let the belly expand. And bring your knees into your chest and rock a little bit, swaying from side to side. All right, so let's circle the knees, kind of rolling in one direction, feeling into your low back. We're sitting for a long time, so just give yourself an opportunity to release any strain. Make sure you go both directions, and then the third direction of bringing your knees apart and bringing them back in. One thing we didn't touch on at all was the pelvic floor and the throat and how interconnected they are with the movement of your diaphragm as well. But we'll save that for another day, the dance of the 3 diaphragms. But for now, just know that the breath penetrates all the way down to your pelvic floor, and it also goes all the way up to your face, your tongue, your throat. Right knee into your chest, left leg long on the ground. Give a good squeeze. Feel your feet move around, rolling through your ankles, wiggling your toes. Notice how your breath shifts when you have a knee pressed up against your ribs. Okay, second side. Left knee in, right leg long on the ground. Feel into the movement of your ankles and your feet. Starfish your body out, big giant X on the ground, reach into your body, fingers, toes, wiggle. Exhale, knees in, head comes up, draw in. Breathe well, open your body out. Exhale, draw your body in. One more time. Let your whole body be the breath. Remember, breathing in through your nose, the exhales can come through pursed lips or nose, whatever feels good. All right, so bend your knees, feet on the ground. Let's windshield wiper our knees left and right. One muscle group we didn't talk about was the obliques. They also, I didn't mention them when we were on the anatomy app. Your obliques also have a big impact on your diaphragm and the way you breathe. So remember all of these connections that you have with the core muscles, your transverse abdominis, your obliques, your quadratus lumborum, your psoas. There's so many muscles that really impact the way we breathe. Okay, let's come over onto our side and come up onto your hands and your knees. All right, so moving through some cat-cows, some arching and some rounding. See if you can feel the diaphragm attachments at your xiphoid process on the bottom of your sternum, and the attachments at your rib cage, and the attachments on your lumbar spine. And let's move around so you can kind of feel your spine, your pelvis, your ribs, everything is mobile and free. Of course, we're moving joints and bones, but also think about all the fascia, all this connective tissue that you're mobilizing through breath and movement. Remember that beautiful big movements of the diaphragm massage a lot of things, all of your internal organs, heart, lungs, spleen, pancreas, liver, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. The diaphragm impacts all of them. Okay, let's stretch back toward child's pose. Walk the hands forward and let the shoulders stretch. All right, walk the hands over to the left side of your mat and feel those intercostal muscles in between from rib to rib. See if you can open up that beautiful space. As you breathe in, can you feel the diaphragm contract? Can you feel the tug on the inner edges of the ribs? And over to the other side. Stretching out through that left side now. The intercostals widening and stretching. Feeling some weight come into your pelvis. Keep relaxing your neck. See if you can touch into the feeling of your diaphragm moving. So the lungs do not move themselves. They require muscular movement. If our diaphragm didn't move, we would not breathe. And so the lungs rely on the movement of the diaphragm. It's just a pressure gradient thing. When the diaphragm moves one direction, it changes the pressure in your lungs. Air goes in. When the diaphragm changes position, come back onto all fours, then the pressure gradient from the air outside to the air in the lungs changes and you breathe out. Okay, so it's just a matter of using the muscles to change pressure. All right, another round of a cat-cow. Loosen up your spine. And then we're going to lift the right arm up in the air. Exhale and slide that shoulder down. Feel into the movement of your rib cage in the back of your body, front body too, but pay attention to what's happening in the back. Can you now feel the attachment of the diaphragm along those back bottom ribs? Relax your neck. And then inhale, reaching the arm up in the sky. Place the hand down onto the ground. Second side. All these subtle movements that we always do in the beginning of our practice are so good for your diaphragm. You know, movement in all ways will impact your diaphragm, but especially if you tend to sit a lot, especially if you sit at a computer a lot, it's really important to mobilize the rib cage and the diaphragm as much as you possibly can. Step away from that posture of sinking and collapsing, which tightens our diaphragm and constricts it. Inhale, reach that arm all the way back up in the air. Hand comes down onto the ground. Find dog pose. Extend through your spine. Let's pedal out your feet. Your poor legs haven't had any movement yet, so let's enjoy. Okay, so pedal, you can lift a hip and sway from side to side. You can move your rib cage around here. You can do some little rolling if you want through your spine. So let your body be as free as you can allow it to be. There's a lot of beautiful things that happens when we go upside down to our diaphragm. So notice you're inverting here. Do you feel like your diaphragm can snuggle back up to its dome shape more easily because gravity, it's not working against gravity? Feel the power of the exhales. Let your diaphragm snuggle back up against your heart. Feel that it might be a little harder to dome or to flatten the diaphragm. Notice the natural pressure changes from being upside down. Okay, walk your feet forward, come into Uttanasana. Shake your tail, shake your shoulders, shake your head, loosen things up. Inhale for a halfway lift. The spine is getting very spacious and long. And then melt again on your exhale. Bend your knees, relax your skull. Let your ribs, try to shimmy them away from your waist. So you get long and spacious, not in just your spine, but in your thorax as well. Inhale, halfway lift. Melt again. Drop your seat, rise up, bringing the arms to the sky, lifting up and open, expand, lean back a little bit if it feels good. Let's cactus open the palms if it feels good. Just feel the chest open. Arms up again. Find your breath, a big cactus, and release your hands down. Interlace your hands behind you. Open up across the collarbones. Find your breathing. And let's bend your knees and relax your arms away from your spine. Big breath in and out. And then release your arms down. Step your right foot forward, left foot comes back. Let's remember the psoas, that giant big hip flexor that moves or is right along our spine, and how connected it is to the diaphragm. Take a deep breath in this extended state where our psoas is stretching. Let the breath move. Let's go back and forth, opening the front leg up a little bit, so bending and straightening the front knee. Follow the breath. Put your knee down, open up the chest. Walk the back foot forward, change sides. Left foot's in front. I do believe I'm going to go 2 classes straight in a row with no standing poses. So, fancy that. It doesn't happen very often. So let's just enjoy what we're doing. A little closer to the ground. Feel the psoas open. Feel the breath. See if you can touch into the attachments of your psoas and your diaphragm along the spine. Okay, move as you're ready, straightening and bending the front knee. Generally speaking, I would suggest always doing a little bit of asana before breath work. I know we did that box breath right in the beginning, but it's usually, if you're going to develop a pranayama practice, you don't have to do a full asana practice beforehand. Put your knee down, but it's good to just do a few minutes, a few stretches, full body, maybe just a couple of rounds of the sun salutation or our typical warm up. Something to kind of get you fascially free and present. All right, release the hands down, and we're going to come back to child's pose. Take the hips back toward the heel. Up to dog pose. Extend through the spine. Big breath here. Come forward into a plank. This is a great place for you to start being aware that you can't belly breathe here. So notice that your core has to wrap around you, that transverse abdominis is fully engaged. So where does the breath go? It grows into the thoracic cavity. So feel that zone 2 of respiration where your rib cage is what's really moving. It's a very stimulating breath. Okay, let's put your knees down, find the ground, roll the shoulders a few times. Release some of those muscles that we tend to grip on our breath. And then open up for a cobra pose, a big chest expansion. Exhale and melt back down. Again, rising up, melting back down. Okay, come up onto all fours, move around in your hips. All right, so the first work we're going to do with the diaphragm is with our little ball. Now, there's a few different ways you can go about this. If you've never done any chest or abdominal massage before, you might want to do this against a wall instead of on the floor, because the pressure might be more than what you can handle in the very beginning. But try it on the floor. And if it feels like too much, then you can go against a wall and you can put the ball where we're putting it on our body, but just against the wall, kind of leaning your body against the wall. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put this under our side body. So you can inflate or deflate the ball however much you want. And I have this right underneath my rib cage on my right side. So you can use a block if you want under your head. You can put your arm under your head, whichever feels good. Now, of course, I'm not going to do this with no clothes on because, you know, here we are together. But if you do this alone by yourself, try the more skin ball contact you can get, the better this will be because you get like a grip on the skin, which can help move fascia a lot. So if you're comfortable, try doing this without a shirt on sometimes so that you can feel the movement. So the first thing we're going to do is just put our hand on our top ribs, on our left ribs. Take a deep breath in, feel that thoracic breath, and then hold that full space, just contract it a little bit, and then relax. And as you relax, press the top ribs like you're trying to connect top and bottom ribs together. Another inhale. Use that top hand to press those ribs down. And you can adjust one more time where the ball is lying on that side body, depending on your comfort, depending on your breasts. I mean, there's a lot that you have to kind of maneuver for comfort sometimes. Okay, now relax this. And we're going to roll on the ball. So you want to roll the ball toward the front of your chest and then roll the ball toward the back. And we're just going to go back and forth, rolling on the ball. Now, I like to do this with my hand anchored on the ground, and I actually lift up my arm so I can kind of slide. But if you want to keep your arm down, you can do that too. We're just kind of rolling back and forth to come to the front of the ribs a little bit and then to the back of the ribs. Now, again, you can do this on a wall. You can deflate the ball, inflate the ball, whatever feels good. And now we're gonna do this in 3 different zones. So now we're going to do it at the bottom of the rib cage instead of closer under our armpit. And same thing, get comfortable. You can use a block. Hand on the bottom rib cage now instead of kind of up at the chest level. Take a deep breath in, feel that shape grow. Hold it for a moment. And then exhale and squeeze with the top hand like you're trying to reconnect the left and right ribs. A deep inhale, ribs expand. Exhale, let your hand help you contract. And after 3 or 4 breaths like that, start in with the rolling. So, you know, sometimes it's more comfortable to, you know, use your legs. So you have to experiment to see how this works for you. So if you feel like you can't roll on the ball that you're getting stuck, try lifting off the ball a little bit so that you have a little more weight on your hand so that you can actually manipulate the roll. Okay. So I can't really see the ball on me because it's dark. I have dark clothes on, but find your way into just massaging that bottom rib. And then the last place when you're done with that is in your side waist. So we're going to get into that transverse abdominis and try to free it up a little bit along with our psoas. So now I'm in between my ribs and my pelvis with the ball. Okay, and once again, you can do this on a wall if the pressure is too much. If you've never had a belly massage before, this can feel a little overwhelming, but the more your body gets used to pressure, the more comfortable it feels. So first, we're just breathing. Okay. You can put your hand on your waist. Inhale, expand, try to contract and engage those muscles, and then relax and let the ball sink. All right, so now we're going to, when you're ready, you can stay there and just breathe there if you want. And if you're ready to roll a little bit toward the belly, you'll get into your psoas a little bit. So you can kind of roll back a little bit and then roll forward a little bit on that ball. So this can be very uncomfortable if you are not used to having a belly massage. So be very gentle. You don't have to move at all. You can just find a place that you're okay with and just breathe there. But the more you can kind of get the body used to having some fascial feedback, you'll get a little release in your psoas and in your transverse abdominis, which will help your diaphragm open up. So, you work around, not just on the diaphragm, but around the diaphragm as well. All right. Now, before we do the second side, we're going to take a break for that. And we're going to come and put the ball right under our sternum. So kind of where those attachments are of the zygomatic process. And you can do this after the two sides. I'm just choosing right now to do it in between the two sides. Once again, if this is not comfortable, you can do this against a wall. So, you don't have to do a lot of massaging, but just get it into that spot of your lower sternum and just rock a little bit left and right, or top or bottom, or spin some circles, whatever feels good, to just remind the diaphragm that it lives there. Breathing well. Hopefully you didn't just eat. This is never a good idea to do when you have a full belly, obviously. All right, and then we're going to come off of there and we're going to do the other side. Now I'm moving fairly quickly through this just to show you, and also in case this is uncomfortable for you, we're not staying very long, but slowly build yourself up. If you do this regularly, if you're really committing to helping yourself breathe better, the more time you spend, the better. Okay, so start at the rib cage, kind of at the breast line. Hand up on the chest or on the ribs. Take a deep breath. Hold that inhale for a moment. And then exhale and try to press the ribs down onto toward the floor. So you don't have to hold your breath a second time, but just feel into the mobility of your rib cage here. Let your body sink into a ball. Use that upper hand on your ribs. Have a gentle pressing, coaxing the ribs down. And then we start the movement. So we're rolling to the back and rolling to the front. Okay, so just go wherever your body can naturally find its way. So, the book that I'm reading, that I'm getting a lot of this from, Body by Breath by Jill Miller. She's a pro. She's been working with this stuff for a long, long time. And I can send you, if you want, just let me know, and I can send you a YouTube of her doing this. And she's got, just a little bra on. You can really see her ribs, and it's an up close shot. And so that might be helpful too if you're confused at all by doing this. All right, now we're going to move into the lower rib cage. You can support your head, hands on the lower ribs now. Deep breath. Hold for a moment, just get used to framing that space. And then exhale and relax. Okay. Find some big diaphragmatic breaths here where we're moving into the ribs are moving widely and broadly and then condensing back on the exhale, nestling the dome of the diaphragm back up. And again, when you're ready to start moving, you can kind of roll the ball so it's in the front of your ribs a little bit, and then roll it toward the back. And you can accentuate this movement as small or as big as your body wants to be. All right, and then lastly, we're going to move down to the gap between our, in our sideways, between our ribs and our pelvis. For some people, this is the least comfortable area, you know, if you're not used to having compression on your belly at all. All right, so deep breath. Hold that contraction for a moment. And then exhale and surrender into the ball. A few breaths. Surrendering into the ball. If you don't have a ball, you can use a rolled towel. You can use a rolled yoga mat, something squishy, not something hard like a foam roller. And then if you want to rock forward and back. This is definitely finding its way to your psoas. Your QL will, your quadratus lumborum will feel this. Your transverse abdominis will feel this. You're just inviting mobility into all these muscles that are in concert with the diaphragm. All right, let's relax and come out of there. Lie on your back and notice what's different. You can have your knees bent or your legs straight. Whatever feels good, try both. So let's just pay attention and notice what's different. There's so many more exercises you can do to become aware of the diaphragm, and I'll try to incorporate more as we move along in our practice. But remember that, you know, the first thing that we did today was just become aware and try to loosen, excuse me, some of the attachments where our diaphragm lives. Next time, I'm going to teach you a technique to strengthen the diaphragm. But for now, just pay attention to how it feels. All right, so let's move towards Shavasana. Straighten your legs if you want. And before you completely drop into the deep places, let's practice a few rounds of the breathing into belly and then chest on your inhale. Remember your child Buddha belly, befriend the belly. Let your whole body sink and soften. Allow your breath to stay deep and full, breathing through the nose, letting the diaphragm move. Begin to deepen your breath.
It got shallow. Begin to move your body in a way that feels good. Eventually coming on to your side. Coming up to sit as you're ready. Belly and chest, breathing through the nose. Quieting the upper ribs, not the upper ribs, but the neck, quieting the neck. Place your hands together at your heart. Offer your prana, your constant movement, your constant flow of connection to this source of energy, the energy of life. Through our breath, let's send this energy to someone in need. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.